All right, we are on. Good morning,
Good
I think,
morning.
all of us.
Yep.
Welcome to the AK Pallav Show, a show which is by immigrants, for immigrants, and where we bring interesting stories of people who have taken the courage to move outside their comfort zone and also tread international boundaries, or in the hopes of making a better life, of gaining knowledge, and also gaining wisdom while doing so. Today, we have a special guest, Aalap, with me, which I have a special connection with from my days back in Dubai, where we connected as a sort of another senior and junior relationship from the IM days. And also, he has been instrumental in always being available whenever I needed him. Just giving a quick call to for some advice on the life in Dubai, also how to navigate the corporate scene in Dubai, and also he has been quite generous by accepting our invite to be in our podcast. Alap, a warm welcome, and also really happy to reconnect after a long time. Alap, I can go on and on his introduction, but he's one of the seniors from IIM Bangalore, and also quite instrumental in navigating through the IT world, first as being a senior employee in IBM and some other big companies, but also later on charting his own course by being an entrepreneur and also as an independent consultant. In addition to that, Alap is also very social and also is a father and a husband. And off to you, Alap. You have been doing multiple things. Also, first as a quite a successful employee in a big company, like many of us, but also later on charting your own course as a consultant and having your own setup. How was it? How was this transition for you?
First of all, hey, thanks for having me here, Pallav and Akshay. Uh, it's
Yeah.
been it was great hearing back from you, Pallav, after a while. And this looks like a good initiative for a lot of people to understand how things can be before they take the leap. As far as my introduction goes, thanks for that. That was pretty good. Pretty much all of my life. After MBA, I joined Unilever, then moved with IBM. I had a couple of startups. I've been a CEO, CTO, everything out there. And now I consult startups on their technical debt, kind of a niche area for startups tech. Not many people are doing this right now, and kind of found my niche in it. As far as the transition goes, it's been a good ride, and we've had our ups and downs. And I say we here because nothing in career goes by yourself. It's always a family decision on what you do. And both I and my wife Apeksha, we've taken multiple decisions in both our careers, which have had our ups and downs, have allowed each other to take different kinds of risks and have varying degrees of successes. I'll stop there and maybe pick it up later.
So, if you could walk us through, probably not going in super detail at this stage, where were you raised in India? What was the family background like? And what made you go on this path of doing a master's of business administration and thereon moving outside India?
Right. So I grew up in India. One is itself multicultural. So I grew up in a mixed culture family in India. So my dad was a Bengali from Bihar who had emigrated to Maharashtra, and my mom was Maharashtrian. I grew up in a place called Amravati, about 3 hours away from Nagpur. Central India, very hot in the summers and heavy rains, everything. The typical Indian town. I was drawn to tech from when I was a kid. One of my cousins had sent me his old computer. I think in '92. I was like 9 or around 8 or 9 at the time, and kind of I got hooked. Very old computer, playing games and everything out there. And I kind of stayed with tech, made sure they decided that I will be going down a tech route. Both my parents were professors. So they had kind of access to some of the university computers and so on. So I could kind of find out more about the things, and went in, got my engineering in computer science, and somewhere in there from a tech career perspective, I realized that tech careers just get a little fast tracked if you do an MBA, and that's what I did. I found out I was from whatever I used to do from a test perspective in schooling days. I had a little bit of an edge on CAT, so I said, okay, might as well go ahead and try it out, and got into IIM Bangalore, which was a good place to be because of the kind of emphasis on the multiple disciplines during MBA. So you could juggle different things during MBA. You didn't have to focus on just one. I did focus on operations and systems. I just purely stayed on systems and I was allowed to do that. I didn't have to, nobody forced me to go ahead and take any strategy or finance courses. You want to stay to systems, you can go ahead and do that. And that was fun. We got through there, had a good internship with Unilever. They wanted me back. Eventually, I ended up managing the system that I had designed during internship, and yeah, it just took off from there. It was a good transition through from tech into tech management.
And was there, and where did the part of deciding to move outside of India kind of come from? Was there something that was ingrained somewhere in your childhood, something from your surroundings, someone who kind of inspired you? What triggered that?
Family. So yeah, I did get a job outside. My wife did. She was at the time working with IBM, and she was working in a global team, working mostly with folks out of Europe. And one of the people that she was closely working with had just moved to Dubai to take a particular role, and he was tasked to build up his team. And he was like, "I want this person in my team." So he kind of pulled a picture through, said, okay, literally shook everything in to get her to Dubai because he wanted her in his team. She had been kind of a support team out in Bangalore, supporting his team from Bangalore. And when he got a chance to build his own team out here in Dubai, he kind of brought her in here. Thankfully, I was working with Unilever in a global role at the time. I went to Unilever and said that since my wife is moving there and I don't, most of my work is happening on pretty much teleconference. I can do that from Dubai as well as I can do that from Bangalore. So they allowed me. It was an allowed situation. They allowed me to move to Dubai, although I continue to be an Indian employee. They paid me in India with the cost of living difference for being in Dubai. They did sort out the visa and stuff, but I continue to be an Indian employee on paper. So I got my salary in Indian rupee, paid my massive amount of taxes, even for that cost of living things.
Oh wow!
But yeah, it was a good transition for a while. Unilever, it ended up being that after a certain milestone, the next stage of the project, Unilever needed the person to be actually be in UK, which I was not cool with. So that's when I quit Unilever.
And what year was
About
this?
9 months. So I moved here in 2012, and about 9 months later is when I left Unilever, 2013.
And why were you? So two questions. One, in the beginning, then 100% this was connected to your wife's move, and that was not something that both of you had decided, or you had something in the background. And second, you said UK you were not cool with. I want to dig into that a little bit. What was the reason behind that?
Right. Okay, let me take the first one. So yes, 100% it was because of Apeksha's role. Now, she got an amazing role out here. And at that time, for me, I went to Unilever and said that I need to move to Dubai. I can deliver what I'm doing from Dubai with no disruptions. And I was willing to take like the minimum cost of living difference between Dubai and Bangalore. But if Unilever doesn't agree, I was happy to move on. I didn't. We were perfectly comfortable with only one of us earning when we moved here, and it is that kind of confidence of being able to be okay with just one person's salary is what allowed me to also leave Unilever later. I did not leave with another job. I left without a job. I quit, took a break. As far as UK goes, again, it was more a career and position decision rather than a location decision. We needed to be together. That was given always. But from a position perspective, I would have been at the same position, maybe a little better, but I would have been at kind of the tech headquarters of Unilever out at Kingston upon Thames. But it would not be a huge propulsion for my career. It would be okay. You're working out of here. You have a little more access within Unilever. My boss then is still with Unilever. He still works out of the same office. I'm still in touch with him. But his advice to me was, if you don't do this for your career position, and we had a very honest conversation about this, because moving to UK is good, but if you are not kind of wedded to this position, don't take it. And that's what I did. I moved out because my wife's position was really good at the time, and it did not make sense for her to leave it 9 months after taking it.
But it does sound like the between the two of you, it was your wife's career which kind of took that priority at that moment, and you supported her in that journey. That hey, you got a really good role, and I think that.
Actually, that yeah, I'd not use that phraseology ever. Nobody's career takes priority over the other.
Mhm.
As a family, decisions are taken together. Whether she would accept the position that she was offered was a joint decision. Whether I would join somewhere else is always a joint decision. As a family, you don't take decisions for yourself. And yeah, we took at the call at that time. Also, it was going to be a transition in the role a little bit at Unilever, so it was the right time for me to move on as well, without disturbing too much, without disrupting things from a project perspective. And yeah, it just made sense. And we've had multiple things later where I have taken risks with her being kind of the stable rock. She is left with me still having been on risks, and we can probably get to that in a bit.
That's what I meant. That was almost like an example of you being that supportive person. That hey, okay, this is good for the family.
Again, it's not one or the other. It's not you being. It's always a joint decision. So don't go saying that somebody asks me to do it and I support them. It's never that way. When you're taking career decisions and family decisions, and where you're going to live decisions, everything is taken together. It's not one person saying that this is what we should do and the other person supporting them. So
Yeah.
Akshay, I'd not use that phraseology ever.
I did not mean it as well that way, but I get your point. I get your point.
Going back to like the time of 2012, I know it's been a while, but
Yeah.
could you maybe throw some light when you landed in the UAE, Dubai? How was the transition for you guys personally? Because I can imagine Dubai today and Dubai back then also was a little bit different, if not very different. And how was the transition for you personally? Because you said you left Unilever in 9 months. So also a bit of light on the professional journey from there on.
Right. So let me go into the personal side first. So yes, we landed in Dubai in the middle of summer, bang at the start of Ramadan. So Ramadan in UAE, and Pallav, you know this, in those days, Ramadan in UAE was very special. A special time of the year where
Yeah, maybe you can elaborate
everything.
that a little bit
I'm,
because
I'm, I'm
our
about to. I'm
audience who
about
are,
to. So
yeah, yeah.
it's very. It used to be very different, and now it's not as hard and fast. But when we came in, Ramadan meant that nobody was eating out or drinking out in public, drinking water as well in public during daylight hours, and that meant really nobody. Anything to be consumed, all the food and drinks had to be done in a closed off space so that people who are fasting are not insulted by it. That was the rationale. So what that meant was we had to very quickly get used to this idea that and of course, IBM had put us up for a month in a particular hotel so that we could find a place to stay. But during that month, our food schedules, and that was the biggest kind of hit for us because we had never experienced that thing. We had to kind of carry our lunch. There would be no restaurant or lunch provided anywhere. We'd carry it in the office. There's the cafeteria is closed off because people who are not fasting are not entering that space. You go inside the cafeteria to drink water, you go in there. To drink coffee, you go in there. So that was a kind of a adjustment for us. We got used to it eventually, and the later years became much easier. Of course, things changed. They started putting up just flimsy barriers for the food courts, and then now they've done away with anybody can eat anywhere. There are no restrictions now, but it was an adjustment for us. And of course, the heat was massive. That was the other big one. Getting to and from office was difficult, quite difficult. And I've always believed, and both of us have always believed in kind of using public transport as much as we can. So used to take the metro, take the bus. Thankfully, Apeksha had a bus directly from the hotel to close to her office, so that was easy. I would take the metro down to the office. But it quickly became apparent that I didn't really need to be in office because the work that I was doing was primarily with folks in UK and India. So I used to go to office maybe once or twice a week, rarely more than that. And most of the time I was working from home. Of course, I was on a Monday to Friday schedule, whereas the rest of UAE was on a Sunday to Thursday schedule. So I would just go to office on Sunday for any paperwork that I had to do because I had no work distractions at the time, and I would be working Monday to Friday otherwise. From a career perspective, it was more of an adjustment for Apeksha, for my wife, than for me. Because I was still working with the same people. I was still working with people in UK and India and worldwide. Apeksha was working with people here for the first time. What really changed, and I noticed this in my later jobs, was out here, and UAE is a big melting pot of different nationalities. So anything and everything comes to you with very different perspectives. So very quickly you end up adapting to taking a kind of global perspective on every problem, where how will this problem affect all types of people, and you look for solutions that kind of that kind of make sense for everyone. And that is something that is very rarely achieved in kind of homogeneous offices. So when I was in Bangalore, I noticed this. I had started noticing this when I was working with Unilever Global. When I was working for HUL, India IT, so Unilever India IT, I was very focused on India specific problems and India specific solutions. But when I started working for Unilever Global, I had to adapt to getting a fully global perspective. A solution I was developing was going to be used in 180 countries. Every single nationality was going to use it, and I was working on a joiner mover lever program. So the system had to adapt to a Chinese person having an English name also, along with their legal Chinese name. So a legal English name and a legal Chinese name. So you had to come up with all of those different things. And in UAE, that is ingrained because anywhere you go, you have people from different backgrounds, different nationalities who come and tell you that what you're proposing as a solution will not work for their background. And that perspective is a big deal.
And once you left Unilever, how was the experience navigating to network or to find what you like or find a new job and opportunity? And I know again it's
Uh,
been more than 10 years, so situations now and the resources
yeah,
are different than what it used to be,
yeah.
but still
Uh, Things are different, definitely. Things are very different from what they were 12 years ago. But I would say, a little disillusioned with how things were. So I had a different background. So I had done an MBA from an IIM. I had been working with Unilever, which is a high paying employer. And when I came here and I looked at, okay, what is my work level that within Unilever, getting paid out here by Unilever in Dubai, and there was a certain salary level that was a starting salary level. So I started going out and looking for my minimum requirement was that salary level, saying that, okay, Unilever values my work level at that. So that's what I would go out and look for. And I was sorely disappointed because the market out here placed at that time, it's reduced quite a bit, but at that time placed a decent amount of emphasis on number of years of experience. So I had very little experience according to them, and I was asking for a salary which was much higher than what they were willing to pay. I did turn down a couple of really good offers because of the salary requirements, which in hindsight I should not have. And eventually it took me a while to get a position which was not comparable to what I was asking for, but at least comparable to what I was getting before from Unilever.
And could you give some examples, like when you say that in Dubai, the market functions in a way that places very high value on number of work experience, but is it something more as well? Like also like it's a different market, the networking and the they are aware of are different and things like that. If you think that they played a role in a bit.
At that time, they did. They were different. Yeah, they were definitely different. Now, I think it is a lot more homogenized. But from a number of years perspective, it was more of a cutoff thing. Rather than okay, you have this many years or not. So it's the positions I was applying to, senior manager positions within tech. The requirement here was that if you don't have 10 years of experience, you don't know enough to be a senior manager. You can be an entry level manager probably. And that's a much lower salary than what I was looking at. So that was the cutoffs made a difference. I had, as I said, a couple of good conversations with organizations which were willing to offer me senior positions, but with a much lower pay. I probably should have taken them in hindsight, but I didn't because I felt from a pay perspective, my Unilever had kind of defined my pay scale, and I had later realized that it didn't pan out exactly because the work level structures in Unilever here were not identical to the structures in India. If somebody had stayed within Unilever for a long time, yes, they would have earned that, but not otherwise.
How did you overcome this situation? Did you had some mentors who were from IMs living in Dubai, or some Indians, or any sort of people network or information? How did you?
People networks made some difference. I got a lot of advice from a lot of people, which helped. People helped me figure out certain areas that I was good at, that I could enhance in front of potential employers with certain certifications. So I went, and people from Unilever kind of told me that Unilever is following a Prince 2 terminology for project management. If you have done that, go ahead and see if you can get that certification. I went at, and I realized that the exam was exactly, all the terminology was exactly what I was using at Unilever. I knew it before reading a word of the official things. So it took me literally 2 weeks to go ahead and give that exam and clear it. Because I knew everything, because I had already been doing it in Unilever. Having that certification then helped in certain types of opportunities. And that's how I landed IBM as a project manager. And the fact that I had delivered security projects with Unilever, IBM was sorely in need of security project managers, IT security project managers, and that's how I ended up at a client side with IBM. It took a
And
while, but yeah, that's how it happened.
I want to maybe like switch gears a bit and go in because
Yeah,
I looked at the LinkedIn as well, and you also had like your entrepreneurial stint, and
yeah,
I guess it takes some time and a lot of thinking and courage, of course, to do that in a country where you've not necessarily studied or also have lived or have had a lot of connections before. So I'm really curious what transpired that led to that, and how was that, I think, which you probably did for like around 2 years or so.
right. So I had quit IBM again with no job, but in a very good mood because I just had a kid and I wanted to spend time. So with IBM, it was an Abu Dhabi based role, and I asked IBM to give me a Dubai based role because I would want to spend more time with my kid, and IBM did not at the time have a project that they could assign me to. So we amicably moved on, and it was the best decision I've taken in my entire career. The first 6-7 months of my kid's life, I was there all the time. And Apeksha had a generous maternity break and a couple of months of additional half-paid leave. And even after she went back, she didn't have any concerns in terms of what is happening at home because I was there since the beginning.
Mhm.
And we did not feel any problems from not having family at home or anything.
Akshay and me don't have kids, or we are expecting. Could you elaborate that on a bit? That because we hear this emotion a lot of times, and unfortunately, in a lot of times, as a regret as well from a lot of successful people like you. But it seems like you saw it coming, and also you placed yourself to enjoy it fully. Why is that? Why is that so valuable and important? If you can just put it in words.
Well, it's been 7.5 years of that person being in our life, and it's have I've enjoyed literally every single day of it. The initial days are really crucial. Uh, I would say the first 5-6 months are really, really crucial. From especially in, and I have to stress this, people who are away from the rest of the family network, because day in and day out, there's a person who needs to be looked at 24 hours, and there is a mistaken feeling that one parent is enough. It isn't. One parent is usually not enough. Both parents need to be fully on the job to be able to do this properly. We didn't know this, but it happened in a very, very convenient way for us because the conversations with IBM were coming around the same time. My contract was coming up for renewal about kind of 15 days after my son was born. So we were going to have that discussion anywhere at that time. So it just made sense for me not to take something for another year. Financially, we were just about okay, and Apeksha's job was still there. She was going to go back after her maternity break. So being there for those first 6 months changed all three of us. It made sure that none of us needed things that weren't there. There was always somebody to take care of each other. So when Apeksha needed something or I needed something, there was the other person always there. She also took a pretty extended maternity break, and we were really happy that we were both able to do that. Once she went back, I took another. I kept up with my certification study. I got my PMP during that time. I was literally studying on my phone with my kid sleeping on me, and it was fun. But that allowed us to also get comfortable with looking at other options. So when I had to go start looking at things, we found a good spend enough time. We weren't in a rush to find, say, a nursery for our son. We took our time, evaluated properly, and got him something. And then I started looking out. Something that you wouldn't find on LinkedIn is I joined a company for a month. It was an event management company, but pretty much a week or 10 days in, it was clear that I wouldn't be staying there long. There was a leadership conflict.
Okay.
But and so there was a notice period. There was a kind of probation period of a month that I spent with them, and it was agreed that okay, I would continue after that. But that place is where I met my co-founder. He was working there. He was actually reporting to me, but he had also decided to quit around the same time that I decided that I wouldn't continue there. He and I kept in touch. So he was looking at doing different things, multiple things. And he kept bouncing his ideas through me because he saw some perspectives that I was bringing along. He was born and brought up in the UAE.
Okay.
Okay.
He had studied here. He knew the place, and he had been in the event industry for quite a while. He's still in the event industry now, and he came up with a particular problem that the event industry was facing, and we together decided that okay, this looks like something that we can solve. Potentially with tech, and that's how we kind of came together. So yes, I did not decide to jump into entrepreneurship because it called to me. That's rare. That very rarely happens. People jump into entrepreneurship because they notice a problem that they potentially can solve. So I had firsthand seen in that month that I was working with that company. I had firsthand seen the problem, and my co-founder had seen it all of his career. And the solution to the problem is something that we came up with together. It didn't work out well enough. We went about it in slightly different way than probably what we should have. Thesis was correct, but our execution wasn't. I actually have a short article up on LinkedIn saying all the things that I did wrong during that journey. But yeah, it was good learning experience of building something from scratch, completely from scratch. One good thing about the UAE that helped in that respect is UAE is very clear on all documentary and financial requirements for doing anything. For anything as far as business is concerned, you know what it is going to cost, you know what it is going to take from a documentation perspective before you go for it. So you can plan for it, you make your plans from a money perspective, time perspective, and then go in for it. There are rarely any surprises from an administration side, except for bank accounts for companies. That's the bank's problem. But that helped us plan things through. I and Apeksha put in some funds. My dad put in some funds, and yeah, we tried things out. It didn't work. We decided to call it shut. We decided to kind of so everything, all the money that was put in was treated as a loan to the company. So when we decided to liquidate it all, we did the finances. Whatever we each owed back, we had to pay back to our so-called lenders. That Apeksha and my dad, we had to kind of together pay back, and whatever was the split that I had to absorb my share, he had to absorb his share. So he actually is still paying me back. Um, so he pretty much every other month there's a small deposit that comes to me from whatever is pending from his side of things. But yeah, we're good friends. We're still in touch. He's doing well in the events industry. He was at the expo yesterday.
And what this journey really taught you, because of course we hear nowadays, especially in the media, what's highlighted are the successes, and that this is how we started, and then rest is history, and now we have these many employees, and it figures itself out. And of course, there's also need for that content, but you are being quite generous and honest about, like, okay, we tried some things, it didn't work out for some reasons. Could you also throw some light on what were your learnings? Like, what did you learn from this experience? Because I'm sure it would have been full of ups and downs.
Yes, lots of ups and downs, but the main things, one big takeaway is to trust your instincts. In the startup journey, there are a lot of different people with different agendas that have different perspectives for how something should be done. And personally, I feel that I failed the company because I went with decisions that I was not comfortable with. I went ahead with decisions that I was not comfortable with from a spend perspective, from the focus on some of the focus from our client for our clients' perspective. There were some decisions that I took because of ignorance, which I probably should have studied more on how to do those things better. But there were some things where I really went against my instincts. And those are the ones that really
Does
make a
any
difference.
one example or any one moment, like an emotional one, come to mind when you mention that?
No, not emotional wise.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there were, as I said, some spend decisions that we took, some team decisions that we took, which we need not have. We took them because we had some money and we made a plan expecting certain things. We made a plan going. So every risk management scenario, you go with worst case, decent case, best case. We went with the decent case and the best case with kind of no fallback for the worst case. That kind of went against my instincts. But I went ahead with it along with my co-founder, and a couple of those big decisions are what made a big difference at the end.
And
hindsight, of course. At that time, you don't realize it that it is happening that way. But and yeah, there are always many arguments, conversations to and fro on the pros and cons of every course of action, and you're taking a judgment call. You stand by that call, and then you reflect if it doesn't work out.
And of course, like one of the key, so I'm really curious to hear what kind of support did you get during particularly that entrepreneurship journey, and who were the people who you felt you were able to reach out the most to for support and advice. Especially, I'm guessing for your co-founder who was born and raised there, it he would still have like that strong network there. But for you, in when you needed that kind of support, where did you find that, and how was that process for you?
So, a couple of things. One, of course, family support is extremely important, both financially and emotionally.
Right.
It was extremely important. Startup life is hard on families, especially with a very young kid. I ended up having to take a call that I would stop work at 4 p.m., come home, spend time, not even look at my phone, even WhatsApp, for till about 8 or 9 p.m. And then I'd start working again.
Mm.
That helped, but it took a while to get there
Yeah.
with some frictions along the way. But from a professional support perspective, there used to be a network, not a network. There used to be a concept called fuck up nights. I don't know whether you've heard this concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in
it's good.
Amsterdam as well.
So
Yeah.
yes, so that really helped us because so my co-founder was aware of some of the people who were organizing those events.
Mhm.
So we ended up there, and in those events, and this is pre-pandemic, this used to happen regularly once a month. They used to have this, and in those events, half the audience are people who have either started something of their own or are looking to start something of their own. So you have a lot of decisions, discussions with a lot of people, a lot of like-minded people who have probably gone through similar problems that you have. I made a lot of new networks through there. The alumni networks helped. So both of my institute alumni networks helped from forming introductions. Lot of potential angel introductions. We didn't convert any of them into big money. Small money, yes, but nothing converted into big funds. But a lot of introductions happened. A lot of which event to attend, which event to not attend, which place to pitch, which place to not pitch. We got we got a number of government organization introductions through the IM networks. So the Dubai Chamber of Commerce, they have a startup wing. So they introduced us to a number of different potential government bodies who would be interested in our solution in their countries and so on. So it helped us validate what we were trying to do. We spoke to the ministry here, Ministry of Human Resource and Emiratization, on our solution for Emiratis. So we are working on a particular freelancer portal kind of a thing. So that would apply to Emiratis. We got a lot of introductions through there, and it helped us validate things. A lot of introductions to education institutes where our target talent market was going to come from. So we were out at number of universities talking about different things. Introductions is what helped a lot, and some of those introductions led to really amazing investor advice, some of which helped us to decide to shut shop. Some of those investors came and told us that whatever you've done, if you have not achieved this, then you really should be not investing any more time and effort in it. Leave it and move on and learn. So we did. That's what we ended up doing. Lessons, yes, quite a few lessons, yes.
And it also sounds like a really enriching experience, like to say the least. Because
Oh yes, the networks I've made since then have stayed with me, and they've helped me in the next ventures as well. So my next venture after that, I learned quite a bit, and one of the things I decided was that I would not be the co-founder in the next place. I would be in the leadership position, but not a co-founder. I met the next CEO of the next company through some network. I don't remember. I think some social network of professional networking. I don't remember what it was. I don't think I even have that app anymore. It was a Tinder kind of a thing, swipe left for professional networking. Yeah, and I went and met this guy who wanted to learn from my failures, and that's what I was projecting, that I've learned and willing to meet people for that. And met this guy. We spent a week. He had just quit his job to start something. I think we met like 3-4 times in that week. And that was first time we met like 4 times within a week, and worked out on literally pen and paper the service design for what this solution should do. That service design didn't change for the next 3 years. So what the two of us had kind of plotted down. So I joined as the CTO there of Vetifly. It was a helicopter ferrying service out in Nigeria, and it was fun. It was a good experience. Lots of ups, lots of downs.
Sorry, could you tell more about the business?
Yeah, so
Casually, so we want to know.
we were flying helicopters. So the solution was to have people. It was a helicopter sharing service. So to oversimplify, Uber for helicopters. So Uber itself has a helicopter service out in New York at the time, which they sold later. But it was a service for highly trafficked cities where there was a lot of congestion, for people to fly over traffic and get where they need to, by saving a ton of time and translating that time into money, especially for the high net worth individuals whose time was precious. So the CEO was from Nigeria, but he was based here. So he had been moving around the world for a while, but he had been here for a few years. And Lagos in Nigeria has this perennial traffic problem. So you probably know what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of people who move between the island and the mainland, and that's what we decided to tackle. The airport is on the mainland, so there's a helipad at the airport. All we needed was a helipad on the island, and have things set up. And we raised quite a bit of money for it, and we grew our team. Then people came to us. So we had our ups and downs. During the pandemic, we dodged a couple of bullets. We were about to start something when the pandemic hit, and everything went kaput. So we thankfully hadn't invested the money that we needed to for that. And we were able to survive and focus on building our tech solution and during that time and so on. And then we dodged another bullet where, during a trial flight with a not well-known helicopter operators, literally for the trial flight, the helicopter crashed. And then we found out the kind of safety lapses from that operator. So then we had to work out what are the things we would have to keep in mind from a safety perspective before we sign on an operator and so on. And when we had started things off, a lot of clients came to us asking to move cargo instead of people. So people came to us saying that we've got like one briefcase full of gold, raw gold, to be transported from the mine, which is extremely dangerous to do by road because of the bandits and so on out there. So can you help us move literally 50 kilos of gold, raw gold, from the mine? And we were like, okay, this can be a business model that we can work on. We had to put a limit on how much we could carry because of insurance requirements. In one flight, you cannot carry more than a certain amount. The insurance companies wouldn't allow that. And so we had to build an entire business model for cargo, and we pivoted. So within a short period of time, we were then sitting on about $400 million worth of contracts, $400 million a year worth of contracts for international cargo movements in and out of Nigeria.
Not just through helicopter, I guess.
Not helicopters at all. Not at all helicopters. This was purely cargo aircraft. So we had to then go ahead and get the aircraft and do that. And so the contracts helped us raise the money to get the aircraft. And we went ahead and got the aircrafts, got the operator contracts and everything. Made a few bad decisions along the way because we had a lot of money. Grew the team, built a massive office out here, rented and kind of refurbished a big office anticipating that the team will grow and the headquarters would be in Dubai, and we would be looking at because a lot of the clients we were working with were looking in and out from Africa to East Asia, China and Korea and Hong Kong. So Dubai would was the kind of the best place for having those conversations from a sales perspective as well, and that's why we built a bigger office here. And then the Russia-Ukraine war happened, and all of our contracts went up in smoke because all the cargo operators around the world stopped honoring contracts beyond 3 months because of the uncertainty. So we had to pay the operators that we had kind of signed contracts with, anticipating certain, even like 5 flights on that plane would have been enough. 5 flights a month would have been enough to satisfy our side of things with the operator, but that also didn't happen, and for different reasons. And we burnt through 7 million in a quarter, and then the company went broke.
Oh wow, definitely sounds like one hell of a ride.
Oh
Quite,
yes.
quite
So
written.
yeah, had to recruit a big tech team. Had to let them all go. Yeah, moved on.
What's the current status? Like company is not operational anymore.
No.
Doesn't exist anymore.
No, not operational. It I think it still exists on paper. The number of labor disputes on paying back money owed, that's there, but I don't know whether there is any way for the money to actually get paid. Risks
It's
people
an
take for joining startups,
interesting
Yeah,
yes.
story here
yeah, yeah.
because
Yeah,
the
but I built
helicopter.
something amazing. I know I built something amazing. The kind of algorithm I built, I could, if it had been running smoothly for say even 6 months properly, using all elements of it, then I could have gone ahead and patented it. It was that good. There's nobody in the world who's managed to do that kind of thing even now. So it's there. It was that good. So I'm proud of what I built from a tech perspective. I'm proud of the team that I had set up. It was a really amazing team. But yeah, not proud of my hand in the decisions that led to company going broke.
But it does sound like they, especially like given the primary external factor that kind of changed everything was beyond anyone's
It
power.
was, and that's a it is a simplification and kind of an
Mhm.
oversimplification. Even after that, we could have taken certain measures to make sure that we kept going, but we kind of relied on our investors coming to our rescue in case things didn't pan out. And that so our investors had come in a couple of times already. So these were not one-time investors. These
Mm.
were investors who had already invested a couple of times to help the company grow to do different things. So that they had originally invested in things for even building a helipad out in Lagos. They had invested for the aircraft for the cargo side of things. So
Mm.
these were investors who were kind of in it for the long haul. So we relied on them kind of staying with us, but they had the limit,
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
would you,
and we were testing those limits.
sorry, I interrupted you. Would you consider that you and the company being in Dubai, was the investing community who was part of, who invested in the company also in Dubai, or that was like spread all over? And what role did that kind of play? Because so far, at least from what we've seen, where you live also kind of has, and where you set up the company has an impact on how easily or how difficult it can be to raise funds. So really curious about it.
Right. It did have an impact, definitely. We had a pretty complex legal structure. So our holding company was based in Delaware, and most of our investors had a US organization which could invest in the holding company,
Mhm.
but most of the money was actually coming from within Africa. These were investors who wanted to solve the problem in their backyard. They had made their money in Africa and in the US. They had significant presence here because Dubai is kind of the first hop out of Africa for anything and everything. So they had significant presence here. So we met a lot of them here, but we knew that the money was coming out of Africa for us. So it was going from Africa to the US and then getting into our holding company, and then we were sending it back to Africa and Jordan and UAE and everywhere.
Yeah, it just sounds, and as you said, like the structure sounds complicated, but at the
So
same time,
structure was a little bit complicated. Having the UAE entity made a big difference because then we were able to separate the for most so-called tech companies or semi-tech companies, they have to go through this where you separate the tech from the operations. So we set it this way that the UAE entity would own all the IP and tech, and there would be an operational organization in every country where we operate, and there would be kind of
right.
internal transfer pricing and so on.
So and how did that then transpire to you finding your niche that you are in right now?
That was from experience. So the experience of building the two tech solutions, one for a year and a half using an external organization, and one building completely from scratch, going through different things. After I left Vetifly, I kind of consulted with a US company for about 6 months
Hmm.
on a particular data engineering project. But what I realized there was I was spending quite some time every week working with the tech lead on things that are technical decisions that they were taking, that the company was taking. I was not directly part of the tech. I was part of data engineering, so I was doing the data side of things. But I was working very closely with the tech leads, and I realized that what I had been doing as tech advice on how things will pan out going forward. I was actually the main tech lead. He was an ex Amazon, ex AWS person, and I was telling him what not to do in AWS. He knew it. He, having worked in Amazon for a couple of years, he knew in and out of it. But then, even then, I was telling him how not to do things because of certain potential future impact. Because I had experienced those impacts with Vertify, having done those things on AWS. So those kind of areas I realized that are unknown for new CTOs, so new tech leaders, and that's something that I can potentially contribute to. It took me some time to realize I need to speak to the CEOs, not the CTOs, because I would have been telling the CTOs how not to do their job, which nobody likes to be told. I had to tell the CEOs what business decisions were making the CTOs do their job not well, and put a dollar amount to why. So
And is there?
the theory for it doesn't exist really. The theory is completely academic. So I've I had to develop my own framework for it.
It does. It does sound like the. Now I understand what really technical debt consultant means.
Right.
In and because and I can clearly see that the problem is like even if you know your systems really well, are you able to anticipate what you might land yourself in the future with? And that kind of comes
Yeah.
from the experience that you had.
Yeah.
Really feels it. Do you feel? How long have you been doing it now? Sorry. The
About 6 months. Yes, about 6 7 months. There's one company for which I did it decently, and they've taken me on as an advisor. So I have regular calls with their tech teams and their leadership teams, and there's a retainer that they pay me. This is something that I'm pretty sure all startups which are beyond the first 6 months, there's the MVP done. Those need to hear
yeah.
how to move from an MVP to a sustainable solution. They kind of need this support. And if you've not done it before, it is worth paying someone who has to make sure that you don't make the spoken to so many CTOs who make the exact same mistakes that I did.
I don't know if Hello has any question, but I have like a question which is like, after all this time, does Dubai feel like home, and what makes it home? If it
Yes,
if it
absolutely.
does,
Absolutely. Dubai definitely now feels like home. When we go back to India, it feels strange now. We don't understand the value of the Indian rupee anymore, how much something should cost. So you take everything at face value and go for it. No, there's no haggling because we really don't know how much an auto ride to a certain place should cost because we don't know. We don't understand how the Indian rupee has changed. In India, it's been very uneven. Anything that has a price tag has gone up massively, and anything that doesn't have a price tag, like the rickshaw rides, have gone up slowly. So it's very uneven out there. So Dubai does feel like home now. It's close enough that we can go down. So the reason I was in India last couple of weeks, there was a family death in the family, so we had to rush overnight, and
Yeah.
we were the first people to reach. Out of all the extended families within India as well, we were the first people to reach there. So there's the connectivity is good to get there. So just hop on, go to Sharjah, go down to flight to find the nearest place and get there. So it's not far from family. If anybody in family needs you, you can get there in very short time. And yeah, it's clean. It's much cleaner than anywhere in India. I would say, but yeah, it has its pros and cons, of course, but the pros are kind of winning out
Mm.
quite a bit.
I had the same question. So that was, I think, our last question for this phase of our chat. Well, thanks a lot, Ala, for being so open, candid, and covering like a variety of topics. I'm sure like we can go on for another hour easily, but I hopefully we'll catch up again for maybe another topic or maybe with more people. Yeah, thanks a lot from my side and from Akshay's side, and
Thank you.
we'll come back to you soon. Some cool.
Thank you. Let me know once the podcast and everything is ready. I'd definitely like to have a listen before it goes anywhere. Uh, and yeah, well, it's been a pleasure. Been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you and reliving some of these